All right, everybody, we're gonna get started in just a little bit. Can you just confirm in the chat if you can hear me? And we've got a couple people over on YouTube. Perfect. Thank you so much, Gigi. We've got a couple people watching over on YouTube. When it comes to the point of questions towards the center of the presentation and at the end, I will tab over to YouTube, but I'm not going to be able to keep tabs on that chat since it's not going to pop up like here on Zoom. But give me just a second. All right, everybody should be able to see me now. If you are tuning in here on Zoom, thanks so much. Those of you on YouTube, thanks so much for joining in. And if you are watching in the playback, hi. Let me know that you watched it. I would love to hear from you. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Give me a second to share my screen and the presentation so that it is showing properly. Just a sec. I'm just testing some stuff on my second device. All right, fabulous. Give me one moment. I'm gonna get my phone in here so that I can keep an eye on any late joiners. How is everybody doing? Those of you who are not tuning in from Athens, how's the weather where you're at? I'm gonna go ahead and get that chat popped up over on the side. Yes, it is being recorded. So this presentation is live streaming over to one of my YouTube channels. Yeah, it's unreasonably warm here in Athens, Ohio as well, Avery. And it will be available for playback. There have been about a dozen people who have reached out via email on my website asking for the form, or asking for the link for once the playback is posted. So that will be available soon. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. I put this little slide on here because oftentimes when I present this, and feel free to turn on your cameras or keep them off, it's all right, y'all. I'd love to see your faces, to see who I'm talking to and some reactions to some of the stuff that we're going to be looking at. But I put this on here just as a quick little ew gross, because every single time that I've presented this to undergrads or high schoolers or even adult organizations, everybody, they see in the throat and they go, oh my god, that's so gross. So thanks for being here. A little brief introduction to who I am if you don't know anything about me. Hi, my name is Justin Swain. I'm a voice pedagogue, teaching artist, entrepreneur. I'm a toddler pianist. I say that jokingly. I play at an early advanced level, but meh, I'm not a pianist. I am a vocalist, a performer, and a voice teaching consultant. I'm a graduate of The Ohio State University. I hold 3 degrees from there, a Bachelor of Music, a Master of Music, and a Master of Arts. The BM and the MM are in vocal performance, and the MA is in vocal pedagogy. Professors that I studied with were Robin Rice and Scott McCoy. During the pandemic, I owned and operated a private music school in Columbus, Ohio, Lewis Center, to be specific. And I opened that in June of 2019 with about 40 of my own private students. And despite the pandemic, I grew that to over 200 weekly students. In addition to, we served about 500 or so, a little bit over 500 students during my time as the owner. I sold that back to its parent company in 2020 to focus on my career in academia. And now I serve as one of the 4 full-time voice faculty members here at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. I'm an assistant professor of instruction in voice and lyric diction. I'm the coordinator of commercial and musical theater vocal studies, and I'm an invite faculty fellow within the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. All right, so I'm just going to make some quick disclaimers. I am not a speech-language pathologist, nor am I an otolaryngologist. So just first and foremost, I'm going to put that out there. If you have any questions about items discussed throughout today's webinar, whether you are watching this live or you are watching it on playback or you're over on YouTube and I can't actively see your chat, please feel free to email me at justin@justintswain.com, and my contact information will be in the very last slide. We have 66 more slides to get through. In the second half of today's presentation, we're going to be looking at quite a few voice issues and disorders in human throats. So there's going to be images and videos taken from within the vocal tract. I've listed all sources on the slides themselves on the bottom of the slides if it does not show it in the video. The videos are not copywritten to me. I do not claim ownership to them. They are all available for free on YouTube University, aka YouTube. Thanks for being here. You're going to learn a lot of new information today, I hope. Again, I'm not a medical doctor. If you have voice issues, you should always consult a medical professional. This is all just information that I'm going to be throwing at you over the next hour and some odd minutes. The opinions that I express today are those of my own, and they do not reflect the ideals of any institution or company that I'm a part of. This is my intellectual property, and the videos and sound bites found throughout belong to their respective copyright holders. So, those of you who are out in the world seeing this, if you would like me to present this to your organization, your high school, etc., feel free to reach out to me. I'm always looking for ways to spread this information. So we're gonna get started. Now, trigger warning, this is our first look into the throat, but it's a fun little video, okay? So here we go. Show of hands in the chat, who here has been scoped before with a flexible scope? Or a rigid scope. So we're going down into the throat now. We're looking at everything from a superior angle, and I'm gonna hush. Picture. Okay, so how many of you is that your first time looking down into a throat at your voice? Obviously I can't see you on your cameras, but sound off in the chat. I'd love to know. So what we're going to be discussing today and hopefully learning more about is vocal hygiene, why it's important. I'm going to give you a general structure of the singing mechanism and provide relevant definitions for today's class. Vocal health and its contributing factors, some daily short-term and long-term vocal maintenance tips, and we're also going to look at some consequences of poor vocal hygiene. So, what is vocal hygiene and how can it be defined? Vocal hygiene is simply the proper maintenance and usage of the voice. It's important to have good vocal hygiene if you use your voice on a regular basis, whether that be in your work life or your professional life. I'm going to go ahead and admit some more people. Oh, we've got even more people. Very good. Vocal hygiene is not just limited to singers and actors, but that is what we're primarily going to be focusing on. But having good vocal hygiene extends to any sort of public speaker or person who uses their voice the majority of the time that they're at work. So teachers, preachers, broadcasters, singers, actors, telemarketers, etc. Why is it important? Well, you were born with one vocal instrument. I want everybody to take a look at their pinky nail. That is about the size of your vocal fold. Okay, they're tiny. Anyone who uses their voice on a daily basis, see all of us, should be mindful of what they put their voice through and ways to help promote longevity and overall vocal wellness for optimal vocal function. So, show of digital hands in the chat, or you can do the little raise hand feature. Just show of hands. Has anybody lost their voice due to screaming or shouting at a loud party or concert? I certainly have. Yep. Exactly. So it's especially those of you who are either in college or high school age, or you've been around the block a couple times. We've all lost our voice from fun activities at some point. Just imagine if that day or two of losing your voice lasted for weeks, years, or the rest of your life. For all of us probably watching this, we would be devastated. I know for me, part of the reason that I work so hard at my piano skills is because I know that I will not always have my singing voice. And so I still want something that I can utilize to be an effective teacher if I'm not able to perhaps demonstrate for certain sounds. At least I'll be able to be very fast and efficient in my teaching with being able to say, what are we working on today? And immediately be able to play it on piano instead of waiting for a track to pull up, etc. So, again, why is it important for us to know about vocal hygiene? Well, a basic generalized knowledge of things that you can do daily to promote vocal wellness and longevity is only going to serve you well in the long term and helps to ensure that your voice is ready to go for performances, presentations, auditions, or simply socializing with friends, which we all enjoy doing. Now, just a couple quick definitions, okay? Your larynx. Find your Adam's or your Eve's apple. Hello, that's your larynx. It's a hollow muscular organ, and it forms an air passage to the lungs, and it holds the vocal folds in humans as well as mammals. It's also referred to as the voice box. The epiglottis, and we will be looking at some videos and I'll point out these anatomical structures as well, but the epiglottis is a duck-billed shaped piece of cartilage that's housed within the larynx. It is responsible for directing air to the trachea or food and beverage to the esophagus. If you've ever choked while drinking water, typically that's because your epiglottis did not close completely over your trachea, and some of that water or beverage went down into the trachea rather than it going into the esophagus. The glottis is not a physical thing. It is the space between where the vocal folds come together. Okay, so it's a place, not a thing. The vocal folds, sometimes now we say incorrectly referred to as vocal cords, but you're always going to see in literature and even in some of the videos that we watched today, people are going to refer to the vocal folds as vocal cords. That was the older terminology. We now know, in addition to them being housed within the larynx, as well as them vibrating as air pass between them, they consist of 3 layers and are typically the size of your pinky now. They were once thought to just be like this band from point A to point B, but we know that there is multiple layers to each of these flaps of flesh. Adduction, as it refers to the voice, is the coming together of the vocal folds. This is also referred to as approximation, vocal fold approximation, okay? Abduction is when the vocal folds come apart, okay? Literally in grad school, the example that Dr. McCoy And those of you who are watching this who are part of the voice community, like the voice science community, you know this Dr. McCoy is kind of a big deal. But he used to say, hey, if an alien is coming along and it abducts a cow from the planet, it is taking something away. And if you are adding something to something, it is coming together. You are adding 1 + 1 = 2. So the vocal folds come together in adduction, and they come apart in abduction. The supraglottis is the area above the glottis, so the area above the vocal folds within the vocal tract. And subglottis is the area below the glottis, so our internal area, okay? The trachea is a large membranous tube reinforced with rings of cartilage. It extends from the larynx to the bronchial tubes, and they convey air down into the lungs. Your trachea is also referred to as your windpipe. The esophagus connects the throat to the stomach. Phonation is the process through which sound is made via the vocal folds oscillating, coming together, and buzzing. And voice disorders can manifest in a number of different ways through habitual voice misuse and abuse, or just because. All right, and we will see some examples of things that just happen. Not everybody with a voice disorder has abused their voice, and I think that's very important to point out. So, this is my for funsies slide. When I first started to go around guest lecturing at universities with this presentation, some literally students say, but I already take voice lessons, why do we need to be here? I already know all of this. Sweet pea, that may be the case, but you're already here, whether it's against your will or willingly. So sit back and learn something new. There are many things that might not ever be discussed in a traditional voice lesson. There is simply not enough time to talk about all of the things. As well, not all voice teachers specialize in voice science, or they may not have specialized training in anatomy and physiology depending on their background. That is totally fine. You can be a perfectly effective teacher without knowing a thing about formants or physics of acoustics or residual lung capacity or whatever. But I like this kind of stuff. I almost went into biology, and so I have a deep affinity and appreciation for the scientific aspect of singing. I did not learn all of this information in my own voice lessons. I have amassed all of this either through my graduate studies or additional certifications that I've taken, or conferences and workshops that I have attended online as well as in person over the years. So, your vocal health and its contributing factors. Your physical age and your maturity play a huge part in your voice, in the stage of development of your voice. Your hormones, whether you are still experiencing puberty, whether you are on birth control, whether you are undergoing hormone replacement therapy, or those of you who are AFAB, assigned female at birth, pregnancy, your body is going to be besieged with hormones. One of the things that I always do with every single one of my students, whether it's a voice student or one of my piano students or music theory or whatever, the second that they come into my studio, I ask them, how is your day? How are you doing? Well, yes, I'm assessing their voice if they're one of my voice students and their response. I'm also seeing where are they at mentally. Are they stressed? Here at the university, we're in week 6. And let me tell you, the cry count is 7 so far in my studio for people who have broken down in their lessons. And that's just part of the deal, okay? But if we are not in a good mental space to create and to be vulnerable and to explore sounds and to play, we're probably not going to sing our best either. So if it is available to you, if you ever feel the need that you need to seek therapy or do counseling, do so, okay? It's only going to help. So our mental space as well as our body stress levels are going to impact our vocal function on any given day. Medications that you take, whether they are over the counter or whether or not they are prescribed, they may have different effects on your voice. I take Benadryl every single night to go to sleep. It's just something that I do. I know it's not the most healthy thing, but I have a brain that does not turn off until like 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm a morning person. So I like to be in bed no later than 9:30, and I'm typically awake by about 5:30, if not earlier. But Benadryl has a very, very drying effect on my voice. And we're going to be talking about the weather change that some parts of the country are already seeing, other parts are certainly not, but it's coming, and things that we need to do to counterbalance the drying of the air in our environment. And then I really, really focus in on 3 big points: hydration, irritants, and voice usage. So, hydrate, limit irritation, and have vocal rest for optimal vocal function. These are things that one can do on a daily basis. Let's dive in. So, the vast majority of literature that I have read, speaking in terms of articles, whether they be from scientific journals or from pedagogy textbooks, typically the recommendation historically has been 8 to 10 8-ounce servings of water per day, right? A common misconception is that you only need to drink water during a performance for your voice to stay hydrated. Drinking water does not immediately hydrate the vocal folds, though, okay? A lot of vocal pedagogy literature suggests that it takes about 24 hours. We know that realistically, for water that we ingest to get to the vocal folds, it's somewhere between 9 and 24 hours. At least that's the new number that's being thrown around in my vocology coursework through NYU. If water were to reach your vocal folds through ingestion directly from your mouth, you'd be drowning. You'd be choking, or you'd be drowning. So just letting you know. The amount of water that an individual needs to ingest on a daily basis is going to vary person to person. Your level of activity, your age, your height, your weight, and environment all are going to play factors into how much liquid you need to ingest to be sufficiently hydrated. If you are someone who is super athletic and you sweat a ton, you're probably going to need to drink more water than someone who just sits at their desk all day. That's totally fine. If you live in a particularly arid environment, so the desert or someplace that is just very, very dry, you're probably going to need to drink more water. Now, it's important to note that you don't just have to drink water to be hydrated. The foods that you eat can also have water content. So in the summer months, I love eating lots and lots of watermelon and melon, and those are super high in water content. So on those days, I typically don't drink as much water, and that's okay. So, hydration 2.0. Cool mist humidifiers are your best friend during the winter months or in dry environments. They just are. Put a humidifier in your bedroom at night and use it, okay? Also, keep your humidifier clean. They are a breeding ground for mold, and you do not want to be breathing that crap in. I do not live in my second apartment here in Athens during the summer months, and I forgot to leave the lid off of my humidifier, and I went to go fill it up and was like, oh my god, there is gunk all in there. So I had to do a very, very deep clean with that before I was able to turn it on a couple weeks ago, now that I'm back in town. Ingesting beverages that have a diuretic effect should be offset with equal parts water. Diuretic meaning drying effects on the voice. My personal recommendation, again, disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor or physician. This is my personal recommendation from myself. I typically try to ingest at least 1.5 amounts of water for every beverage that I drink that has drying effects, whether that be coffee or alcohol or whatever, okay? So if we're going to drink 8 ounces of water, 8 ounces of coffee, we're going to drink 12 ounces of water to offset that, okay? To quote Richard Miller, one of the most famous voice pedagogues and voice scientists, he's no longer with us, but he is quoted of saying, "Sing wet and pee pale," meaning if you are singing, drink enough water that when you urinate, it is not a dark amber color and that it is clear, ideally, according to him. And I kind of try to live by that as well. Irritation. Now, I'm not just talking small children. Limit how often you shout or speak at an elevated level. This is particularly important for teachers. Okay, if anybody ends up going into music ed, or you have to just talk over a group of kids or adults too, use amplification when possible. I know that in many places that is a luxury, but you can get like little headset body packs on Amazon for like $50. I marched in our Pride Parade a couple summers ago with the company that I used to own a location of, and it's a loud festival. I'm talking like 700,000 people, and I was responsible for a group of 50 people. I was not about to destroy my voice to get people's attention. I looked like Britney Spears walking down that path, but I had my little mic pack on and they could all hear me. And I was able to talk by the end of the day. So that's a win. Try not to excessively clear your throat, cough, or speak in vocal fry, also known as creaky voice. We tend to fry a lot or speak in creaky voice quite a bit when we are when we are tired. This is just something that we do, but try to be mindful of it. When you are excessively clearing your throat, this is something that I am currently dealing with. I had RSV this summer. I taught a summer music academy and I contracted RSV from one of the kiddos. And for about 8 weeks, I was coughing violently from sunup to sundown. Thankfully, we have a speech language pathologist on faculty at Ohio University, and we're going to talk about our program that we have here. But she provides free voice screenings to staff, faculty, students of the School of Music and the School of Theater. So I was able to get in and actually look at my vocal folds and just confirm that it's just a little tiny bit of wear and tear. And with a little tiny bit of just monitoring how I have been using my voice, I've been able to come back to regular vocal function. And again, that's not from voice misuse to have a voice issue. That's just I was sick. I had to cough. If you have to clear your throat, generally what's going to be recommended is that you just swallow really hard. Get a bunch of spit in your mouth, take a sip of water, and just swallow to clear your throat. Excessive glottal attacks, and glottal attacks are the forceful adduction, the coming together of the vocal folds, typically followed by phonation or an abrupt release of subglottal breath pressure, should also be avoided in daily speech and singing unless otherwise called for. Ooh, my computer just, froze up, good. Avoid whispering when possible. Instead, try to speak at a lower volume. The reason for that is when we whisper, the vocal fold tissue itself actually stiffens, and it is not able to get a good, clean contact between the two vocal folds. So it's actually way more taxing on your voice than if you were to just speak in a lower volume, okay? Continuation. Don't smoke. Don't vape. I cannot tell you how many empty vape pens I see on the streets walking from my apartment to the School of Music every day on the ground. And I just roll my eyes every time I see it. If you are a singer or you're an actor, sweet peas, treat your voice like $1 million instrument. Okay? I'm about to turn 36. I grew up in a household of smokers. I smoked for like 7 or 8 years. But when I became serious about singing, I stopped. It's a gross habit. No one likes it. I'm sorry. It is really hard for many people to quit. And addiction is absolutely a thing. But if you can't avoid it, just don't do it. Okay? Avoid vocal irritants such as dusty, dry, or overly odoriferous environments. Now my office at OU, as you can tell, it is autumn in here. It has been autumn in here since September 1st. I took out my decorations. I have candles burning all the time. I have Bath and Body Works sprays that I'm constantly. It has to be an experience and a scent maze when you walk into my room because I'm just that kind of person. But for some people, that can be irritating to their voice. Thankfully, it has not been for any of my students or for myself. But if you know that you are someone who is sensitive to scents, probably try to just know where those exist and avoid them if possible. Monitor the foods that you ingest. If you are someone who is lactose intolerant, like I am all broken out. I have smoothed my skin through puberty, but if you are someone who you get really, really phlegmy when you have dairy, or you get super, super phlegmy when you have spicy food, probably don't have those things when you need to sing, okay? I'm a weirdo and I like eating a pint of ice cream before I perform, but that's because when I get nervous, my body's response is to go dry. I'm talking cotton mouth, I'm talking dry eyes, lips go dry, skin goes dry, and it's a whole thing. So I am intentional about getting a little bit of extra saliva going, okay? Other things that you can do, Twizzlers. They're mostly glycerin. I didn't know this until my class this summer at NYU. We actually have in our ventricular, underneath our ventricular folds, also known as our false vocal folds, I knew that we had this little gap between the false vocal fold and the true vocal fold. Well, there's a little tiny bit of, there's a salivatory gland, I can never say that word, but if you choose something, it actually gets a little tiny bit of saliva down there, close to your vocal folds. So nowadays, I keep these little Twizzler nibs handy. God bless. Develop and maintain a vocal warm-up and cool-down habits that can be executed first thing every morning, especially on days that you know are going to require intensive vocal use. I'm not saying roll out of bed and do your lip trills and your hums and your NGs and all that. No. If you are someone that showers in the morning, get in that shower, hum, inhale that steam, enjoy, feel the fantasy, do your thing. But if you know that you are going to have to use your voice throughout the day, it behooves you hum a little bit in the morning. I'm not saying do a full-blown warm-up, but just get the body moving, get the anatomy moving. Now, some long-term effects of vocal irritation and habitual voice use, question marks. Now, I'm not going to make any hard and fast claims because I'm not a medical doctor. But we all perhaps know Paris Hilton, Miley Cyrus, and Stevie Nicks, and we're just going to take a look-see at a couple things with them. Now, Paris.
Super extra.
Oh my God, it stopped. It went backwards. Sorry, Magic Mouse is strange. Here we go. Are you gonna play? Come on, YouTube. Oh, what is going on? Something's happening. Oh. This is so sad. 1 second. Technical difficulties. Thanks for your patience, friends. Sound, but I didn't hear you.
Let's talk about the Juicy Couture tracksuit.
You can still hear her voice, so that's good.
In 2000, I was, New York socialite. I was modeling. I was doing my thing. I loved to go out. The 2000s were all about Britney Spears, boy bands. It was all about monogram and labels.
I wish that it would let me skip ahead. Hopefully the Miley does not mess up. I wish that I would have downloaded these 3 videos. I knew this was going to happen. The rest of my videos are all downloaded, so that's not going to happen. But Paris Hilton, first off, she's a fascinating person. In the past couple of years, she has come out to actually say, no, that character, it's a character. Like, that was a marketing ploy to speak in that way, to seem like a dumb bimbo blonde, whatever. It was a thing when I was younger. And I mean, we still hear a lot of people speak with vocal fry, like, oh my God, yeah. But over time, that can be very damaging to the voice. I'm not going to say that she has voice damage, but I'm just going to say things to think about. Miley Cyrus.
Is the road I'm taking, head high up in the clouds. I was born to run, I don't belong to anyone. Oh no, I don't need to be loved by you. Fire in my lungs, can't fight the devil on my tongue. Oh no, I don't need to be loved by you. See my lips on a mile, everybody's talking now, baby. Ooh, you know it's true, yeah, that I was BBC.
I love Miley's voice. It is so interesting. And even though I might not like agree with like everything that she does in her personal life, she, first off, it doesn't matter what any of us think about, like, oh my God, it sounds like there's vocal damage. She has more money than all of us combined will probably ever see in our lifetimes, and so it does not matter. We are nowhere close on her radar. But there are some people that will listen to that and they'll say, oh my God, that's such an unhealthy sound. Perhaps. But in some commercial styles especially, that grit and that distorted sound is considered highly marketable. While she has some stuff going on, and we will look at that later, because she is on the record to say that she does have a voice disorder as of the past year. It is in the media and you can Google it. Some people will say, like, oh my God, we have to fix her voice. Perhaps some people don't want to get rid of that, and that's a personal decision, because your voice is, for us who sing and act and all of that, it's deeply attached to our identity. Okay? Now, Stevie Nicks. Some people are like, she's got so much voice damage, she's got X, Y, and Z. Well, yes, she's probably had voice damage, and I'm fairly certain that there is evidence of that out there. I just want to bring her up as an example of physical age and our body changing over time. This is natural. Hopefully the first little clip will play. Yeah.
We'd like to do a new one
I believe,
from our
yeah,
latest album,
1975, this first one.
which is an acoustic song from Stevie Nicks. It's called Landslide.
Anybody a Stevie Nicks fan in here? No, that's okay. I am.
This is for you.
I want everybody to pay very close attention to this key.
Took my love, I took it down. Climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in snow-covered hills, till the landslide brought me
We're
down.
gonna listen through the chorus.
Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life?
This is much more recent. Much lower key.
Climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in the snow-covered hills till the landslide brought me down.
There's a lot less offense.
What is love? Can a child within my heart rise above? And can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life?
And so some people really, really harp on her about, oh my God, her voice is going. She is older than most of us. She has had a prolific career, and she has earned the right to opt down if she feels like it. Dang it. But all of that to say, our bodies change over time. We should be mindful of what we put our bodies through, specifically our voices, especially when we are younger. That is the time to do preventative care. And in my 35 years, I wish I would have put more slimes and potions on my face in my 20s like my sister told me to, because the fine lines, they are coming. But you can preserve your voice as long as you can. So now we're going to talk about preparing to speak and sing. We're going to cover warming up, why we do it, how we do it, what are good, simple, proven methods to warm up the voice. We're going to give a little bit of insight into when we're choosing songs. Where do we find reputable voice instruction? Universities vet people who either have, high success rates. Their students rave about them. They have some kind of knowledge they are versed in the area that you are interested in learning about. Okay. I am not the voice teacher for every person. While I do have a very strong training in classical and musical theater and commercial, I don't specialize in country singing. I'll just use that as an example. When I'm working with commercial singers, it's typically pop rock, it's high, twangy belt kind of stuff. And the physiology and anatomy that I understand through training, it only helps to serve my students that perhaps they want to sing in a more wispy kind of indie kind of way, or my jazz singers, etc. If there's ever anybody that's like, I can do it all, first off, they're lying to themselves. And again, this presentation is my opinions and do not reflect those of any institution or organization that I'm a part of. But people are fabulous. One teacher may just be a godsend for a certain kind of student and just absolutely not right for the other, and that's okay. All right? What is a good range for your voice type? I don't know your voice. Get a teacher if you don't already have one, okay? And those of you who are here that do study with me, hi, thanks for being here. What should you avoid when choosing songs? We'll talk about that. Speakers, how can you practice for preparing to speak or sing at a function? Hello, Savannah. All right, so I want us to take about 20 seconds, just internally think about why we warm up. And if you want, feel free to share it in the chat. Now, if you've already seen a version of this presentation, don't spoil it for everyone else. Okay, no cheating. But I want you to just consider, why do you warm up? Okay. 5. Actually, you know what? I'll have one more Twizzler nib because they're so good. All right, here we go. We warm up to reduce the risk of vocal injury, to prepare the muscle groups responsible for breath control, phonation, etc., to do their jobs effectively and efficiently, to self-assess and self-monitor how our voice is responding on any given day, to prepare ourselves mentally and get in the zone for performance or practice. So, feel free. If there's something that I left off of here that you can think of, either unmute and just say it or leave it in the chat. I like interactive stuff. Okay, I'm gonna keep going because I don't see nothing. All right, we got so much more to cover. We're only on slide 24 of 69 now. So, how do we warm the voice up for singing and speaking? In my opinion, I try to determine on any given day or practice session what style of singing that either I, a client, or student, etc. are going to be doing. I ask myself, am I going to be doing high intensity belting or screaming? Or is it a lighter, wispy area kind of style? Is it more conversational? Design your warm-up. Yeah, finding resonance. I love that. Thank you, Chance. That's fabulous. That's in response to the previous slide. It's lovely. Design your warm-up for what you're going to be putting your voice through and the style of singing that is going to be demanded of your instrument, okay? Use the warm-up to also self-assess and see what is or is not working with the voice. Again, our body is our instrument, literally, okay? If a string breaks on a piano, I can email the piano technician, he can come replace it. If one of the strings on one of my guitars that I don't know how to play go out of tune, I know how to tune it. I do know how to use Guitar Tuner app. But the voice, no. Like, one day it might feel dry, so I might have to do a compensatory measure in order to actually get it going or to get a sound that I want out. Other days it's just going to be really clunky, right? So determine, is the voice too heavy as I ascend? If I'm doing woo, and then all of a sudden it cracks halfway through, is the top of the voice open and free sounding? Is the bottom sounding as it does on days that you feel your best? How does it feel when you are singing? That's oftentimes the thing that I ask my students. What does that feel like? Not what does that sound like to you? Because oftentimes when you ask someone, what does that sound like? It's usually going to be a quantitative or qualitative rather. It's good. It's bad. I don't like that. But if I ask, what does that feel like? That's usually because, well, either that's probably on the right path and I would like for you to replicate that, or because I just want you to remember what that sensation was. Because even if we can't use it for the particular vocal task that I just asked you to do, we might be able to use that somewhere else, okay? Also, there's no such thing as good and bad in singing. There is context, okay? I preach we can replicate a sensation typically more successfully than replicating a sound. Okay. A free resource that I would love to draw your attention to is voicescienceworks.org. It's a free resource. It's all science-based. I believe it's operated by 2 members of PAVA, which is the Pan American Vocology Association, of which I'm a member of. They just had their conference in Miami, Florida. And one of my colleagues, actually my faculty mentor, just got back yesterday from that. It was just this past weekend. But it is a fabulous resource, and they have this warm-up guide, they have stretch guides and all this other stuff, as well as science-backed voice pedagogy. Come on. Ooh. There we go. Sorry, I was stuck in the chat. SOVT exercises. Semi-included vocal tract exercises or postures are some of my absolute favorite things to do when I'm warming my or a student's voice up. What does that mean? It's something that introduces being above the glottis, and it yields a back pressure above the vocal fold, so supraglottally, and it lowers the threshold of pressure required for phonation to occur. What does that mean? That's a fancy definition of saying it's a low impact way of warming up the voice. Who here has sung with a straw before, or a kazoo, or you've probably done lip trills or tongue trills or some variety of that. I am known for the person to have a bunch of paper straws in their studio. I use this for a multitude of reasons. If it's just an open straw, we are using light vocalization, not loud unless I'm working on other stuff. But typically it's just to get light vocal fold edge touch contact going, okay? I like paper straws because you can pinch the end and increase the back pressure, okay? And it stays. Also because save the turtles. So, kazoos, you can also hum into big end. But I also use this for dual purposes. I use this with singers to test for nasality. If someone is singing with nasality, or they're speaking with nasality, it's gonna buzz because sound and air is going up through the nasal passage via the nasal port not being all the way closed. So you can use that to test for nasality. It's also great. I'm also a diction professor, so I teach French, German, Italian diction, or elocution, how to sing in foreign languages, and there are 4 nasal vowels. So we use the kazoo to verify that they are actually attaining nasality. Some styles of singing, nasality is wanted, okay? Some singers want a nasal sound. They like it. Love that for them. For me, I try to not think of it as being like either on or off. I try to think of voice training as a versatile thing and like a soundboard. Do I want more nasalence in the sound or do I want less? So I'm constantly thinking of the voice in sliders and dials, okay? 5-tone scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, glides, do, whatever. Alternating thirds, all of that. Generally what I'm going to begin with, just simple stuff. Dr. Ingo Titsa, I want to say within like the past 10 years, it's maybe been a little bit longer than that. He is known on YouTube and all over the voice community for really advocating straw singing, straw phonation. It's based on resonant voice therapy. There is scientific evidence to support its effectiveness, but it isn't a catch-all. It's not the end-all be-all. There are some speech language pathologists that swear by straw phonation. There are some that are like, it's a gimmick, don't do that. Again, not an MD. Do what works for you. Consult your medical professionals and your voice teachers. Vowels and nasal continuants, vowels such as E and A, help to find a brighter sound due to the change in the height at the rear of the tongue, the dorsum of the tongue. Everyone say E, and pay attention to where you feel the back of your tongue touching. If you observe that it's touching the upper molars, E. E, you have observed that, hey, a high back tongue, number 1, it yields a brighter sound, okay? We can experiment with this. See if you can go from an E tongue posture, keep the back of the tongue anchored against the upper molars, and go E, A, A, O, U. Now, just as you would normally go, E, A, A, O. When we consciously keep the back of the tongue touching the upper molars, number 1, it's going to take the bulk of the muscle of the tongue up out of the pharynx, out of the throat, okay? We have 2 primary resonance chambers when we are singing. We have our oral cavity and we have our pharynx, our throat and our mouth. Our tongue is this magical gatekeeper that when the tongue is flat in the mouth, we typically observe a darker timbre or a warmer tone, okay? There's more space in the mouth for the tone to resonate. However, when the tongue is flat in the mouth, more of the muscle of the tongue is in the throat. When we go to an NG or E posture, the majority of the back of the tongue yanks up, it pulls up, it's in the mouth more so than in the throat. When the tongue is up in the mouth a little bit more, there's more space in the throat for the tone to resonate. We observe that aurally, meaning hearing it, as a brighter tonal quality. In musical theater styles, we typically want a brighter sound quality and more contemporary post-2000s sound. And in more legit style or classical and even some commercial styles of singing, we may want a darker timbre. And so we may observe more loft in the mouth, raising the soft palate, speaking with taller vowels, elongating the vocal tract either via the lips protruding or observing a little tiny bit of drop in elevation of the larynx through a gentle onset of a yawn, if you will, or sob space, depending on where you think. Or how you think, or your training. It's totally fine. We all have different ways of getting to these different sounds. I'm just preaching what I advocate in my own teaching. The sound and aw can help with belt and high twang quality when coupled with a high back tongue position, with a bit more narrowing introduced into the vocal tract. I got into more contemporary voice pedagogy through Estel. I don't adhere specifically just to Estel model. I pick and choose from many different things. But one thing that I liked about Estel is the sound recipes to get the 6 voice qualities, twang being one of them. And it's great. Love, love, love. Other voice models have different terminology for the exact same thing. I'm not going to say AES narrowing or aryepiglottic sphincter narrowing. I'm just going to say that there is some sort of narrowing that is happening supraglottally above the vocal folds. I'm going to let them in really quick. There we go. Totally fine. All right. Back vowels such as O and U help to find a lofty, darker quality in our more head voice or head dominant helper vowels. Just through the fact that we have to actually change our embouchure, our lip position, when we create those vowel sounds. Okay? When we go ooh, 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 it's typically easier to get a more heady, hooty, head dominant, falsetto kind of quality, whatever you want to refer to it as. I'm going to just think it's light vocal fold edge coming together. I'm one of those teachers that believes that you can have head voice anywhere within the voice or falsetto anywhere within the voice, because I'm thinking about what are the vocal folds doing? What is the vocal fold mass doing? Is the body pressing together firmly, or is the cover of the vocal fold just lightly touching? Okay, so I won't go down that rabbit hole, not today, maybe in a future webinar. M's, N's, and the NG consonant sound of ang, those are nasal continuants. We have to observe air and sound passing up into the nose in order to make those sounds. If you are testing for nasality, whether that be with a kazoo or plugging your nose or a nose clip, you're going to always observe that sound goes into your nose during those consonants being produced. That's normal. It's fine. You're not broken. These consonants also help with working on resonance, okay? The NG is my favorite in particular, especially if I am trying to just track my squealo in my singing. I'm just etc. So it helps me just kind of move things around until I can hear some overtones, and then I move into a vowel sound. That's it, okay, on that slide. Come on, keep going. There we go. Contemporary singing, belters, etc., rock vocalists, just some stuff that I adhere to. Once balance is achieved in the middle of the voice and I feel comfortable exploring higher and more intense modes of production with belters and rock vocalists, we begin lateral to medial narrowing, twang, or belt exercises. The range for belting that I adhere to is G4 and above. Whether you are AMAB, assigned male at birth, or AFAB, assigned female at birth, that's just what I do. Belt or bright placement, it's characterized by a bright forward placement that's not nasal, it's not in the nose, but tongue is high. Typically we are going to feel sensations somewhere either in the mask or in the front of the mouth. Forward vowels tend to work best depending on what pitches are being sung, so E, A, etc. Contemporary continued. Some exercises. I love hey, 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 or yeah, or I. Finding a bright call quality. Closed O and open O can also be great when coupled with a forward placement, so high back tone. Oh no! Yeah! Ah! Etc. Unless we're working towards a particularly difficult passage that presents specific patterns, like the descending run-in bootylicious at the end, we don't really need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the exercises that we're using. Oftentimes, simple patterns are going to allow us to focus more so on the production of the sound rather than us spending mental capacity trying to just do a difficult rhythmic or pitch pattern. Okay, so we can focus a bit more on what we're doing and not the pattern. Some resources for those of you who are interested in commercial contemporary music stuff. Sin of Screaming, Melissa Cross, she is like godmother of rock vocal stuff. Her DVDs are very old now. And unfortunately they are like bootleg copied all over the internet. But if you can ever get your hands on them, it behooves you, even if you don't use the stuff in them, just to know where a lot of this is originating. Bel Canto Cambelto and Bel Canto Cambelto, What About the Boys by Professor Emeritus at Penn State, Mary Saunders Barton. She helped codify bringing musical theater into the academy and it being seriously considered. She's a fabulous teacher. So You Want to Sing series, it's a bunch of books published through the National Association of Teachers of Singing, or NATS for short. And Estel Voice Training, this is where I got my start in contemporary voice pedagogy and just rethinking the voice and how I use it and how I teach it. Obviously, I came from a classical background, and I was always told, if you belt, you're going to ruin your voice. If you're not doing classical, it's wrong. Sweet Pea, you can't sing Defying Gravity in a classical way without sounding like a fool. No one wants to hear, no, I don't want to hear I don't want to hear that. I expect to hear a bright brassy sound in that. Okay, some more resources. App Accompanist, a lot of pianists hate it, but it's our friend. It has a monthly fee. There are vocal exercises on there, and there are thousands of songs, both classical and musical theater. YouTube is a dangerous place, all right? There's no governing body dictating what is being placed on YouTube. There's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of people who are just regurgitating things that they heard in their choir, okay? There are a lot of well-meaning choral directors that say, breathe from your diaphragm. Guess what? You breathe with your diaphragm, duh, okay? Sing from your diaphragm. Guess what? The diaphragm is only engaged during inspiration, during inhalation. It has nothing to do with exhalation. It is the muscle group surrounding it that when it disengages, because when the diaphragm contracts, it flattens. It causes a void of air pressure in your thoracic cavity and your rib cage if your vocal folds are closed. When they open, air rushes into your lungs to equalize breath pressure between atmospheric pressure or supraglottal pressure and subglottal pressure, okay? Again, very well-meaning people, but it's just old stuff that we now know through modern science that it's just not factual. Karen O'Connor is a fabulous resource on YouTube. Sing Wise Vocals. She doesn't always credit the sources, but as a grad student, as a young professional, having read quite a few books, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, I'm a big nerd, I would go, oh, that's Richard Miller, that's in chapter 6. Oh, that's Ingo Tietze, that's blah, 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 blah. She got a lot better at it more recently, but she doesn't post that often. But she has fabulous free resources on her website, singwise.com, as well as on her YouTube channel. Voice Science Works, I already plugged it. Ask your voice teacher to record or recommend vocal exercises that promote vocal growth at your current stage of development. They know your individual voice better than I do, and certainly better than some rando on YouTube. Okay? Cooling down, semi-occluded vocal tract exercises are fabulous for it. When you cool down the voice, it should not be intense. You're cooling it down. Would you run a mile and immediately stop without walking? Maybe, if you cry. But that's not good. We want to bring the body back to equilibrium. I'm going to speed run through these next couple of slides because I want to get into the videos. What should you sing? Things that interest and inspire you. There is nothing worse than getting music that is assigned to you that just does not vibe with you. Let your teacher know. As a pedagogue, I know that my students are going to be more keen to practice music that actually is authentic to their experience and that interests them. Okay? There are thousands of songs out there that we can use to accomplish various goals. Now, that's not saying don't ever sing pre-1970 music. You should, okay? Especially if you're in musical theater. Especially in today's climate, you got to be able to do all sorts of stuff, and it behooves you to be able to cross over back and forth as you wish. Train versatility. Songs that are age and range appropriate. That's important. We all tend to want to sing things or do things that are beyond our vocal healthy range or limits. Just because you can make a sound does not mean that it is healthy or sustainable, especially at the extremes of the voice. I ask my students at the beginning of every single year or when they start studying with me, what do you have as vocal goals? 9 times out of 10 people say, I want to sing higher, I want to sing lower. Why? Okay, cool. I love that for you, but if it ain't in the cards, it might not be in the cards, and that's okay. We're still going to work on it, but prevalent problem that we especially see in the opera industry is people having their careers cut super, super short due to singing roles that in songs that are just not appropriate to their current stage of development or even their voice type sometimes. One of my colleagues, Melissa Brobeck here at OU, I love that she says this. She says, change the key, change your life. If something is too low, make it higher, especially if it's in contemporary music. In classical stuff, the traditions dictate that, certain roles have to just be in this one particular key. That's why we have the Fach system. I'm not going to harp too much on this. Change the key, change your life. Vocal rest, just as we rest our bodies when we sleep, so too should we rest our voice throughout the day. With my students, I try to use the mental image of a fuel gauge, especially if they are running on empty all the time. Their voice is always fatigued. You can mentally practice your songs. You don't always have to sing, okay? You can practice rhythm. A mindfulness exercise. Track your voice usage throughout the day, especially if you are someone who is super, super social, and just monitor how much you are using it, okay? We typically don't realize how much we speak as singers and actors. Schedule times to be silent, not just while you're sleeping. Long-term vocal maintenance, eat a healthy diet and regularly exercise if you can. Practice good vocal habits, limit loud usage, sing songs that are appropriate to your vocal register, develop a functional vocal technique. Warm up and cool down your voice daily. Don't overexert the voice when you can. If you're serious about singing in the long term, develop a baseline of healthy vocal function by scheduling an appointment with an otolaryngologist or an ENT who specializes in working with singers and have an endoscopic examination performed. Okay, get scoped. Request a video file. Any images that you can get for your future reference. If it's available to you in your program for free, do it. Vocal maintenance continued. Consult medical professionals if you experience any of the following for more than 2 weeks. Vocal hoarseness that refuses to go away. Frequent vocal fatigue. Frequent vocal strain. Frequent heartburn. Have moderate to severe allergies which interfere with phonation. OU has a newly launched vocal wellness program with a licensed SLP, Dr. Kennedy Digas, and it's housed on the 3rd floor of our school where we all, as full-time voice faculty members, teach. Our exams are free to our students of the College of Fine Arts. That is not common at many places, unfortunately. I wish that it were. Various over-the-counter and prescribed medications can affect the voice. Antihistamines and decongestants typically result in a drying effect. The big stuff that I'm going to just say, because you can always read this back later. Aspirin, ibuprofen, and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or NSAIDs should be avoided when possible when singing. They thin the blood by coating the platelets that form a clot. A single dose of aspirin will affect the platelets for a week. A single dose of ibuprofen or other NSAIDs will affect them for about 48 hours, according to the literature. Alcohol and THC have similar thinning effects on the blood and should be avoided or eliminated entirely, especially before or during voice usage, okay? So if you go out to karaoke and you're drinking or whatever, don't yell. Final recommendations. Sing and speak with a well-supported sound. If you begin to run out of breath at the end of a sentence, breathe. You're going to just kind of squeeze out that breath. All that does is increase tension in your voice. Be mindful of your daily usage, trying to avoid exerting a great deal of excess tension, okay? We're at the halfway point. We have 30 more slides, but we're going to speed run through this in like 20 minutes, probably more than 20 minutes. If you have to go at 8:30, the playback will be available on my website, justintswain.com. So pathologies, vocal pathologies, you can read that quote on the left from Johns Hopkins University. Examples of vocal pathologies. Today we are going to look at laryngitis, polyps, nodules, hemorrhage, vocal fold paralysis. We're not going to look at muscle tension dysphonia, but you can Google it, okay? Feel good vibes, because we're about to look at some nasty stuff. If you are someone who is squeamish, you don't like blood, you don't like looking in the throat, etc., this is probably the point that you sign out, okay? Thanks for being here. Kittens, the little orange cat, the top right is Pumpkin. He is basically our second unofficial mascot here at Ohio University. He lives on our uptown Main Street at the Board of Elections, and he sits in the window all day. And he is very beloved. When that cat dies, I am certain that this camp is going to shut down for a day. I did all of my work at OSU, so Michigan, boo, go Bucks, and Tabitha Brown, because she's great. So we're going to go down the YouTube rabbit hole. Acute chronic laryngitis, edema, hemorrhage, nodules, polyps, cyst, HPV of the vocal folds, candidiasis, smoke damage, GERD, vocal fold paralysis, and if we have time, intubation. So what are we looking at? That arrow is pointing to two pearly white bands of vocal fold tissue. Those are perfectly healthy. Okay, that is what we want to see. If we see pink or inflamed, typically that's indicative of something going on, whether that be inflammation or what have you. Okay, we're viewing the folds from a superior angle, meaning from above via a fiber optic camera. To orient ourselves, we're going to look at this little presentation. We're not going to watch the full thing in the interest of time, but there is a link. It's on YouTube. It is from Boston University. All you have to do is go on their YouTube channel. Now, she's going to orient.
So we're going to put a sheath on it so it's clean in your nose.
That is a flexible
Before I do
scope.
that, can you plug one of your sides of your nose and sniff in?
If you go and you
Good.
get
And the other
scoped
one?
with a flexible scope, this
Great.
is
Okay, so
pretty
that one
typical of
seems a
what
little
might
bit more
happen.
clear. So we're going to go in through this side. So I'm just going to put this little,
Skip ahead.
but a little bit.
She put a little bit of jelly on that.
So I'm going to use
make
two
it
different
insert
types
a
of
little
light.
bit
I'm just going to
easier.
use a light like
Sometimes you
this.
might also be sprayed. Oh my goodness, I hate this darn cursor. Glad that it is a
Good.
video that I
It's a
downloaded
little
on
tight
YouTube.
up there.
Sometimes they
I'm gonna
will
come down a
spray
little bit.
Nephrine into your nasal passage
It'll
to
go
help
along the
dilate
floor
it
of
if
your
you
nose
are
here.
particularly tight in there, so they
Great.
can fit that fiber optic camera through the nasal passage.
Now we are looking at the velopharyngeal port, which connects the oral and nasal cavities. Notice how it can quickly and tightly close during stop consonants, like the k in cat.
Great. And do that again for me.
Lost from view by the base of the tongue and the epiglottis.
I'm going to pause it. Can you see my cursor? Okay. This little, like, bill-shaped thing, that's the epiglottis. The true vocal folds are there. false vocal folds or the ventricular folds. We're also looking down into the trachea. The arytenoids are back here. We're not going to talk about those in depth at all today, but I just wanted to point out some anatomical things. So, healthy vocal folds, what they look like when they oscillate. This is from voicedoctor.net.
Normal young.
One thing that we missed in the previous video when she was explaining stuff, when we are looking at the vocal folds oscillating like that, we are not seeing them oscillate in real time, really. What we are seeing is there is a microphone placed externally on the throat, and that is recording the pitch or the frequency that the person is singing. When you sing A44, the vocal folds are opening and closing 440 times per second. There is a strobe light attached to the tip of that camera. Okay, it syncs with the frequency that the microphone is picking up, and it flashes at a rate that allows you to see various stages of the vocal folds oscillating. Okay, so they don't just move that slowly. Really, they're very, very quick. Okay, several hundred, if not 1,000 times per second. Acute laryngitis typically clears up when the causes of it are eliminated. It causes a raspy, hoarse voice. It's inflammation of the vocal fold tissue. Viral infections similar to that which cause the common cold can cause laryngitis. Vocal strain caused by yelling or overusing the voice can also cause laryngitis, bacterial infections, etc. We can observe that the vocal fold tissue looks kind of inflamed. It kind of looks like raw chicken. And ever since looking at these kinds of videos, I don't like looking at raw chicken, so I try to cook it as quick as possible. Chronic laryngitis. This is Dr. got it. It lasts for 3 weeks. It can cause vocal strain and injuries. Currently looking at while the vocal folds kind of look kind of white-ish, they're pretty swollen, okay? Habitual voice overuse, such as singers or cheerleaders, smoking, chronic sinusitis, excessive alcohol use, acid reflux, as well as inhaled irritants, such as smoking, and allergens can cause chronic laryngitis. Edema, this is vocal fold swelling. This is from Etna ENT Clinic. This is just swelling. This can be caused by overuse. Those of you who are AFAB, or those of you who experience menstruation, I should say, your body retains water when you menstruate, okay? So oftentimes when you are on your cycle, especially with my female students or my AFAB singers, I will just, discreetly ask, is it that time? And they're usually like, how did you know? Because you're straining to get vocal fold closure, because your vocal folds are swollen a little bit, so it's going to require a little bit more effort to actually get them to fully adduct and get that big full sound that you're accustomed to. Okay? It's normal. We work around it. We work with it. This is where we're going to see a little tiny bit of blood, okay? A vocal fold hemorrhage, if it will play. This is when a blood vessel or one or more burst within the vocal fold tissue. This happens sometimes from strain. We're looking at the video going into the nose and all of that. I'll try to fast forward it. Oh, they're really phlegmy. So we can see that there's some burst blood vessels in there. Okay, it's just red. I hemorrhaged in the very first 30 seconds of a faculty recital I gave last year, because I was getting over a cold and I was like, I can do it. I'm going to sing this hour-long recital of really loud, difficult music. I heard a popping sound in my head and I knew that I hemorrhaged. And I was like, I can either keep going or I can give up. I kept going. I worked around it. But typically, it can resolve on its own. Okay. It's common. Sometimes just coughing or sneezing can result in having a vocal fold hemorrhage. And other times it's from just habitual yelling and screaming, etc. Okay? Sometimes it just happens. That's okay. Vocal fold nodules. I was going to play this entire video at length. I'm not going to. No reason to. But we are going to...
Vocal nodules are swellings on the vocal cords. And they always appear in pairs. So you have a right vocal cord with a swelling, left vocal cord with a swelling. And we tend to see them in professions of heavy voice use, such as presenters, teachers, telephonists. We also occasionally see them in singers where they're performing excessively and perhaps in a suboptimal technique. Vocal nodules can give you a rough quality to your voice. And if you use your voice over a prolonged period, it can also give you vocal fatigue and give you aches in the neck because you've actually had to try harder to bring the vocal cords together because of the gap that now exists before and after the nodule. They also affect the vibration. Now, there are some people who wouldn't actually notice that they have vocal nodules. Some singing styles, like rock performers, actually it adds character to the singing voice, so they may not want anything done about them. But certainly someone with a more purer voice, or say a teacher who has to talk for many hours, this rough quality can get worse and they can suffer vocal fatigue.
How do you know if you have them? You have to be scoped. Okay? Someone's going to have to look down in your throat. Polyps.
So much easier.
What we're observing in this particular video, we can see that the vocal tissue itself is looking pretty pearly white, right? But we can also see that towards the middle of them, there are these kind of like fluid sacs on them. That's a great frozen thing, and that was not even my intention. But polyps are sometimes referred to as like blisters on the vocal folds. They are typically filled with some sort of fluid. They can be resolved through voice therapy typically, but if they go on for longer and not being treated, sometimes they might turn into nodules, because nodules are essentially calluses on the vocal folds. When the tissue is rubbing constantly in one spot, over time that starts to build up callus. It may turn into a nodule, okay? And again, we know from the previous slide that nodules typically form in pairs. Contact granulomas, they can be caused by a number of reasons. Acid reflux, they can be caused if you're intubated, if something is constantly rubbing on either a vocal fold or a part of your vocal anatomy or in your larynx, a granuloma can form. And we can observe that that is just a fleshy mass at the posterior of the vocal folds. Vocal fold cysts. Cysts sometimes happen, and we don't really know why. Sometimes it's, you might get bumped and a cyst will form. Other times, it just happens. I had a graduate student at Ohio State when I was a grad student. I was teaching someone privately. He was a PhD student in physics.
Long ago,
very first lesson that he had, I was like, something's going on with your voice. I think I would like for you to get scoped before I feel comfortable continuing with you. And he's like, I can't afford to get scoped. He didn't have health insurance. It can be pretty costly if you don't have insurance. And what tipped me off to the possibility of him having some sort of vocal issue is because his voice was pretty hoarse at the end of his singing, as well as in a particular part of his range, specifically in his top, when he was a tenor, it was very, very breathy. And I observed that he really had to squeeze in order to get a lot of sound out. Fast forward a couple of years, he had a full package, doing a little, wrapping up his PhD program. He had full health insurance and he was able to get scoped. He had a cyst. He had to pay out of pocket, I want to say like $5,000. After insurance covered most of it, he had to have surgery to have the cyst removed, and he had about 6 months of voice therapy afterwards before he began singing again. But his voice was perfectly fine after that. And now he's doing his postdoc at Fred Hutchins University in Seattle, and he's enjoying singing still, which is great. This just happened. HPV of the vocal folds. This is where, if you are watching with a minor, I'm going to talk about where this comes from, so you might want to either mute or jump out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, HPV, human papillomavirus, it's an STI, it's sexually transmitted. We know that STIs like dark, moist places. Well, besides our genitals, we also have that in our throat. So if it can grow in one, it typically can grow in the other. HPV is a virus, okay? Meaning viruses don't go away, okay? If you end up having papillomas, HPV specifically, in the vocal tract, they must be excised, okay? No amount of voice therapy is going to get rid of them. And in this individual, we can see that they had them on the vocal folds themselves, above the vocal folds, as well as down in their trachea. Now, in this portion of the video, they have had them excised, I believe through laser excision. We can see that there's quite a bit of scarring. Now, I don't know if this was necessarily a singer. It probably wasn't. But they're going to take that video and they're going to look down now into their trachea. And down there we can see that there are still some papillomas. Now, I'm going to fast forward it. This is post-op. A couple months later, they come back in to be seen, and we can see that the HPV has grown back. Okay, so this individual is going to have to continually have HPV papillomas removed from their trachea, probably down in their bronchial tube. I mean, because now we're getting down in there where the trachea bifurcates into the bronchial tubes, down into the lungs. So that's pretty scary. So practice safe sex. Okay, candidiasis. This is a yeast infection. It doesn't necessarily mean that yeast infection came from someone's genitals. This is very common in people who are immunocompromised. So if you've ever had to go on antibiotics, sometimes the body, antibiotics, they kill the good bacteria as well. And so yeast can thrive. And so we see thrush is what we call it. Thrush is very common in infants. Having this yeast infection of the throat, and you just take some antifungal stuff and you're good to go, I'm sure. Okay, so they say. Yeah, it looks gross. It looks like cottage cheese. Miley Cyrus, voice disorder? Question mark? Who knows? Well, we do know that she has Ranke's edema. Smoker's polyps, specifically. Ranke's edema is not treatable, to my understanding, from what I have been taught in my coursework. Once you have it, it's there. Perhaps in the future, as of today, we are October 3, 2023. Perhaps in the future it will be treatable. I hope that is a thing. But in this particular video, we're observing Ranke's edema in a long-term smoker. Kind of sound. When they talk, they probably kind of sound like that. We all typically have at least one person in our life that we know of that has a really, really kind of sound when they speak, and not just Beetlejuice. We can see like those focal folds are really swollen. They're really, really inflamed as well. That's smoke damage. Acid reflux, reflux laryngitis. So it just causes a lot of thickening and irritation along the vocal fold edges. Okay, this is what I'm currently dealing with. I have silent reflux and it sucks. My voice has not been optimal since I noticed that I wake up in the middle of the night with heartburn all the time. It's great. Vocal fold paralysis. Now we're getting at the 8:30 time, so if you need to go, feel free to go. I anticipate this will probably go over by about 10 minutes, and then I want to do about 5 minutes of question and answer if there are any. Sometimes you could damage the superior laryngeal nerve, the recurrent nerve, or something that innervates into the larynx, and a vocal fold can paralyze. In this particular instance, it is unilateral, only one vocal fold is paralyzed and the other one has to work harder to come over to the midline to make any kind of sound. I know someone who had a particular cold virus. He had a big performance and he decided that he was going to continue to sing. That particular cold virus attacked his superior laryngeal nerve and he has vocal fold paralysis now. And that's unfortunate because the singing career was over in an instant. COVID-19 is not over. We have just learned how to adapt to it, just like we have the flu and every other major virus. Ventilators are life-saving machines, but the body is not meant to have something pumping air into us. I don't know who these people are, but welcome. You're right here at the very end of our session. Thanks for joining. The playback will be available. When you are intubated, there's risk of lacerations. It applies additional pressure on the larynx. Arytenoids can be dislocated or subluxation can occur. And over time, these issues can lead to scarring in the upper airway and the vocal folds. More potential risks. You're not meant to be on a ventilator. Okay, it's not a natural state for the body. To be ventilated, it requires heavy sedation, especially with people who have severe inflammation in their lungs caused by COVID. There's potential for infection. There are studies that show that some people have PTSD-like traumatic stress disorder symptoms after and while they're recovering. One of my adult clients back home in Columbus, at the very beginning of the pandemic, she's a woman in her early 40s. She was in peak optimal health. And before we even knew like that it was COVID that she had to be put on a ventilator. When she was intubated, they nicked something and her voice has never been the same. She no longer sings. This is now 3 years after all of this, 4 years after all of this started. And she can't sing anymore. And she had a beautiful jazz voice. Thankfully, she has other artistic outlets, but during the height of the pandemic, when people were being intubated and put on machines constantly, hospitals were overrun, and sometimes a little bit of malpractice probably did happen. I do know of people who work in the medical field saying that they had to intubate people and they just had a quick crash course because we were so slammed in the hospital system. And that's really unfortunate, but that is the harsh reality of what some people have had to deal with. So, my little scared straight moment, I'm just going to show a little tiny bit of what gets thrown down in your throat when you're intubated. Oh my gosh, magic mouse my behind. This thing is so finicky. I'm just gonna...
One reason why your dick can't get hard.
Oh Lord
Guys,
Jesus.
some bitches are just too aggressive. For example,
please,
you ever been talking to a bitch for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, and y'all done sent each other nudes, y'all done talked about fucking and shit,
Thank you so
and
much
then it's time for y'all to
coming.
meet up and the vibe is good.
Goodbye. I knew that there was going to be at least one. Oh, I love that. And I know that that was not...
what the heck was that?
Some rando. And I'm going to get rid of these people that came in really late. And Sophia, I did see your face, so I won't boot you. But I went ahead and booted
Yes,
the
please
other
don't
people.
move me.
I'm not going to.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I would never do anything
I
like that.
apologize for that, y'all. I had a feeling that we would at least have one, and I'm sure enough we did. It always happens. Anyway, back to topic. Gotta love the internet. When you are intubated, you get sedated. You know that.
80%, you've loaded up an oxygen reserve in the periphery onset.
Now, I just want to show the insertion of this gigantic thing,
Open the
okay?
patient's mouth with your right hand and hold the laryngoscope in your left. Not too tight, with 3 or 4 fingers as close to the blade as possible for precision and control. Insert the blade in the right side of the mouth, carefully pushing the tongue aside. The aim is to create an unobstructed line of sight to the larynx by pushing the tongue to the left and lifting the epiglottis, exposing the vocal cords. This requires precision, not brute force. A common mistake at this point is leaning forward, as it feels this will give a better view. It doesn't. Stand upright with the left arm at a 90-degree angle tucked in towards your body. This allows for better ergonomics, better communication with the team, and a better overview of the ventilator,
So that's
timer, and the patient.
a lot.
Is required to pass the vocal cords. Advance the tip until the cuff has disappeared.
Going down
and
into the
vocal cords are
throat.
between the 2 black lines.
Not
Ask for
fun.
inflation of the cuff
Okay.
and carefully.
So, what I will say is the pandemic isn't over just because we're over it, okay? So, do your part, stay safe. So, what now? What else should you know? This is just meant to be a springboard into further reading and exploration of concepts that I introduced today. Research, ask questions, continue learning, okay? We're fortunate to live in a day that we can pull up information on Google as well as through our YouTube channels and stuff. Read journals if this stuff interests you. Ask your teachers questions. If you are not currently in lessons and you are able to, take lessons. Find people that you trust their pedagogy, and that if this is stuff that is really important to you, find those individuals who teach from a fact-based voice pedagogical background. And again, I will say, just as I said at the beginning of the presentation, just because someone lacks this particular knowledge does not necessarily mean that they are not an effective teacher, okay? This is the kind of stuff that gets me excited, so I teach. Don't just go with the cheapest voice teacher that you can afford, okay? Vet people, see reviews, see what their students have done, see what they have done. You're paying for a practitioner's expertise, not their time. To quote Mercury Stardust, who is a fabulous transgender TikTok person, you are worth the time and the resources it takes to invest in your vocal technique and health. She says you are worth the time it takes to develop and learn a new skill, okay? But I just changed that a little bit for our needs. Some additional resources. My teacher, Scott McCoy, my most recent teacher, I should say, he is retired now, but he owns a publishing company called Inside View Press. His textbook, Your Voice in Inside View, is pretty much used globally in nearly every single voice pedagogy program that I'm aware of, voxped.com. If you are in the state of Ohio, Ohio State has a remarkable otolaryngology clinic. And we oftentimes send students up to Columbus from Athens if they need to see an otolaryngologist. Sing-wise, I already mentioned Karen O'Connor, her website, as well as her YouTube, Voice Science Works. And if you are someone who is an Ohio University student, the Vocal Wellness Program is available to you. And more on that, oh look, me with a rigid scope down my throat last spring when Dr. Dygus launched this program. Those are my vocal folds. I was particularly phlegmy that day, and there you go. This is, again, it's free to our students and our faculty and staff in the College of Fine Arts. Questions that I might be able to answer? Feel free to unmute and ask if you would like.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it, Megan.
I was just wondering if you could go back to the slide about cooling down, because I'm taking notes and I didn't get to write that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Give me just a second. I love your College of Performing Arts sweater. I bought one from my former student, Kendall. She's a BFA there, musical theater. And yeah. Oh, and actually, one of my mugs on my desk is Point Park. Never been to Pittsburgh, but love the school. Are you a student at PPU? Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry. Yes, I'm a freshman musical theater major here.
Fabulous. If you ever see Kendall, please tell her that Justin says hello.
Okay. Kendall who?
Kendall Williams.
Kendall Williams.
Yeah, she's African American, and I
What
think
year?
she's either a second or a third year, I want to say.
My roommate thinks she knows who she is.
Yeah, Kendall. Tell her I say hi. Anybody else have questions? I'm gonna check in the chat. I'm gonna pop over to YouTube. I'm kind of afraid to look over at YouTube to see what comments might have gotten spewed there. Oh, none. Great. Nobody was crazy. That's fantastic. Okay, how do I get back into there? All right, so if you need, or if you would like to keep in touch, if you have any questions that pop up, my official email is justintswain@ohio.edu, or you can contact me through my professional/personal email, justin@justintswain.com. There's also a contact form on my website. If you want to buy me a coffee, feel free to Venmo me a couple dollars. Justin T. Swain. Thanks for attending. I hope you all learned something exciting from this. This will be available on playback. I am going to link it on my website. And then there will be additional things that I offer, webinars, etc., in talks of probably doing a belting workshop, reverse engineering sounds for commercial singing. So listening to a singer and figuring out how are they making that sound and how can I replicate something similar in my own voice in a healthy manner. Keep tabs in my social media. I'm Justin T. Swain on Instagram, or prof.swain, or the Swain Studio on Instagram. All right, everybody. Thus concludes the presentation. Thanks so much for staying up with me. Hope you have a great evening. Happy singing. Bye.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Have a good night, y'all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Professor Swain. Thank
You're
you.
so welcome. Have a good evening. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So welcome, Chance. I will respond to your message.
Stop.